Hi there, thank you for joining us. You are tuning into our video series on peer support specialists. My name is Chrissy.
And I'm Jody.
And we are so excited about today because we received an email from a viewer and listener, and they had some questions for us because she is going to be starting peer training here soon. Where she is, there is nothing in place already for peer support, so that could be a pretty daunting experience. And she just wants to know a few things, basically, that I wanted to know before I went to it as well. I was pretty terrified, but luckily I had him to help me figure that out. So she's got a couple questions for us, and we feel like they're going to be helpful for anybody who's going into the peer support specialist career. So we're going to answer those questions today for our show.
Okay, let's dive right in.
Okay.
The first question was, what's a day like as a peer specialist? And in my opinion, no day is the same. Especially, like if you work in a drop-in center doing peer support, or if you go to like a mental health institution, you have to be flexible because no day is going to be the same.
Mm-hmm. And I remember when I had my interview and when I first started the job, when I first started peer support, Jody told me, he said, this is the best job in the entire world because we just get to hang out with the coolest people and use our own story to help them. And he was right. And he's also right about it completely depends on the setting. So I'll just quickly talk about what my experience has been like in a drop-in center. It's relaxed. It's more of people come to you. People make appointments with you. You have conversations with people, and then they just turn into a peer support session. So if you're placed in somewhere like that, that's kind of what it looks like. What I'm going to be doing now is in like a hospital setting, institution setting. That's more of who needs peer support, and I will intentionally go and set up a meeting with those people. Or if someone sees you in the community and they approach you, then you schedule a meeting. And then community outreach is where you go to people that are referred to you, and you do intentional peer support with them, and it's usually scheduled. So it totally depends on what you're doing and where you're at on what a typical day looks like. But the best thing is that no day is the same, so there's not a lot of room to get bored.
That's right. Yeah, it's kind of to add to what Chrissy was saying. What really helped me was going to intentional peer support training. And you learn about the 4 basic steps of it. Is, in a nutshell, it's connection, worldview, mutuality, and moving towards. So, I boil it down to, you use those 4 different stages throughout your day. In a drop-in center, you may spend the bulk of your time in the connection phase, where you're maybe chatting with a person. And then, if you're in a mental health institute or a psychiatric hospital, you may stay in the life is limited, more like moving towards phase. Like, how are we going to move towards better recovery? So, you got to change gears a lot.
Mm-hmm. Which is great.
Yeah.
The second question is, what is a client meeting like? So, I'll kick this one off. I think Jody just described a lot of it. That all depends on the client. That all depends on what the goals are for the client or what stage of recovery they're in. We've talked about recovery before, and we'll probably always go back to it. A person that's in a life is limited phase, meaning they don't have a lot of outlook or hope, and they don't think that they can do anything with their life because of mental illness. Your conversation and bringing them to a point of hope is going to be very different from someone who's in the actions for change. what I try to do is get a good read when I sit down with someone. If I don't know them yet, and I'm just learning, and it's a brand new client meeting, I try to read where they're at by asking open-ended questions. How are you feeling today? Tell me about your experience. Why are you in the hospital? Why do you need peer support? And all of a sudden, you'll start to get kind of an overview of their story, and you go, oh, okay, I kind of see where they're at now. It's because it's basically all listening, and that actually answers the questions. A client meeting is all listening.
Yeah.
They're not looking for you to tell them what to do. They're looking for someone who understands and to be empathetic. So I guess my personal answer to that is just getting a feel for where they are and try to remember when you were in that, in your own journey with mental illness, and dive into it with them. And if you do give them any guidance, let it come straight from how you got through that stage.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's the way I would put it is you've got to learn fast to meet them where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways that once you establish the connection, explore their worldview. And like Chrissy was saying, open-ended questions, get them talking.
Mm-hmm.
And once you understand where their worldview comes from and how they've come to know the world as it is, then you can better understand how to support them. And you're going to find commonalities, and that can be a good thing. That can enhance the connection. And then you're going to find differences, and that too can be a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you can open up and learn. And the thing that you learn from that person with that differing worldview may help you later on with connecting to another peer. It's like, okay, now I understand where you're coming from, how you've come to know that. Next time that I'm with somebody, it's gonna be a commonality now. While it may not be your direct experience, you may know how to question differently based off that other person's worldview that they share.
Yep. You do question number 3?
Sure. Question number 3. When do you know a session is done?
Great question.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to hear Jody's answer, because I don't know the answer to that.
Well, okay.
I'm kidding, but I mean, this is a huge question, I think, and one that it's hard to know. So I want to hear what you have to say first.
There's a variety of ways that you know it's done. Probably the simplest that I've found is when I worked at a respite center. We did what was called a warm line, where we supported people over the phone. We gave peer support over the phone. Well, we had a 20-minute time limit. So it was real easy to know when you were done. If that person was still talking at the 20-minute mark, you ended the call. So that's the easy one. Let's take an example. Let's say that the conversation revolves around setting a whole health goal. Once you've laid that, the goal is to set that goal. Once you've accomplished setting that goal, then it's done. The gray area is when it's just a general conversation. That I would try and gauge how much time does this person need. If this person has fully expressed themselves and there's starting to be some silences, that's kind of the natural way. It's like, okay,
physical cues.
Yeah, physical cues, and I think it's an intuitive knowing once you get used to being a peer specialist.
And I would say that I just kind of wasn't sure if my gauge on this was right, but I'm glad that you went first, so I know that I'm okay. I kind of, peer specialist is all about helping the person that you're with. However, it's very important to be able to recognize what's going on with you for reasons of having to do with vicarious trauma and things like that. You have to take care of yourself too. So the more you do peer support, the more you know when your limit is. My limit is between 20 and 25 minutes. After that, my brain starts wandering. I am thinking about what I'm going to do next. And it's not because the person isn't interesting and I'm not there to help them. That's my limit with most people. And so I'm not helpful to them anymore. I'm not able to retain the information, especially if it's traumatic. I'm not able to hold all that information and give feedback that's positive or that's going to be beneficial to them. So I kind of set my own little time limit. Okay, I'm going in to talk to this person for X amount. I'm going to be available to them for 20 to 25 minutes. And if anything happens before that, and it's not going to last that long, typically I know that the session is over when I find myself repeating things or the person is repeating things over and over. At that point, that's kind of a cue of, okay, I think we've gone about as far as we can here, and we'll pick it up later, or let's set goals for the next time we meet. But kind of in general, a good note for me, especially if I'm working in the hospital, is does that person feel better than they did when I sat down with them? That's always a good gauge.
Yeah.
That little spark of hope. Is it there? Okay, then, the work is done here. You don't want to beat it to death either. Like, There's a fine line.
And that's a great way to put it, Chrissy, because I think the product of that is you can be present with that person. If you get into situations where you let conversations go on too long, it's like you said, your mind starts wandering. I mean, it's a self-care thing. If you're talking with someone about their traumas, knowing that you've got 20 minutes to spend with that person, you can get all your listening in, and you can make them feel heard. But you don't get into that. Okay, my mind's wandering, and I'm not giving them my full attention, and that does them a disservice as much as it does you.
And so our final question, which is a great one, is what is the goal for a meeting? The goal, and again, this all depends on what the person is looking for, what stage of recovery that they're in. And so I'm just going to kind of go back to what's the client meeting like, kind of the same answer. The goal of the meeting is what you find out in the first few minutes, which is ask open-ended questions. And as you get into being a peer specialist, you start to find out what your own script is and what you feel comfortable with. You don't have to go by, oh, how are you? How long have you been in the hospital or anything like that. It's more of a comfort thing for me. I usually just sit down and like, what's up? How's it going? Tell me about you. Let me tell you, I've been where you are. This is blah, 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 and it opens them up. So the goal comes from you asking them. You don't have to say what's the goal of the meeting, but kind of open-ended questions of where what do you want to get out of this, and how can I help you? What are your needs? How can I help you meet your needs today? They'll communicate that to you, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes people don't communicate what they need because they don't know what they need. Honestly, most of the time, people just need to be heard. They want someone to hear them and to believe what they're going through is real. And that's the greatest thing that we can provide to people, because when you're in your symptoms, and when you are in episodic. When you're in an episode, all you want is for people to believe that what you're going through is real, because you feel like the rest of the world doesn't. And so that's what we're there to provide. So as far as goals, those can be communicated at the beginning, or maybe halfway through you're like, oh, this is what that person needs. Yeah. So that's kind of my answer to that question. What do you think?
So a lot of what I'm going to say is very similar to you. Here's a good rule of thumb and something that I do to kind of put myself in check with whether I did my job. 1, did I listen to them? 2, did I validate them? 3, did I empathize with them? So, I think, and did I have compassion for them? And I think if I can answer yes to that, then the goal of my meeting was met.
That's a great way to look at it.
So.
No peer specialist meeting is the same, and that's the beauty of what we do, and it can be very scary and daunting going in, but the truth is that you're using what you've been through and your personal story to help others, so you can't go wrong. People are going to be so grateful to you for being someone that's willing to open up and understand them and share their story. So thank you so much for emailing us those questions. That was so fun, and it helped us to kind of refresh on what we're doing and why we're doing it. Any final words?
I think I'm good. We're at our new location, and we're still together.
I know you missed the library, though. There's a bunch of hangers back there. We'll figure something out. Keep the questions coming. Keep them coming. Jody and Chrissy, JodyAndChrissie @gmail.com. We're willing to answer questions. We're all in this together. Keep sharing your story. It's our duty as people in recovery with mental illness to get out and help others and crush the stigma.
That's right.
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in today. We will see you next week. We're not really sure what our topic is next week. We're both starting new jobs here. So
keep the questions coming.
Yeah.
That's a great way to do this.
Yeah, and share the video. There's so many people out there that need to hear these things because they want to give back. Peer support specialist is the way to give back. It's the way of the future. Have a wonderful Labor Day. Yay! We'll see you next week.
Sounds
Bye.
good.